I was telling people at work this morning that I was doing another interview, and they always ask, "Oh, who you talking to?" I'm talking to this guy, I'm talking to that lady, or whatever. 95% of the time, like, "Oh, well, that's great." But then I said Spike Slawson from Me First and the Gimme Gimmies, and it's like their brains exploded. They could not believe that I was talking to you. People say, "Oh, I saw them in Boston, or I saw her in New Haven, or Hartford." I mean, people aren't just fans of this band; they go ballistic for you guys. I mean, it's the greatest freaking cover band of all time, and the reactions were unbelievably exciting. It was really cool.
Wow, that's great to hear. Good to
Yeah.
know. Who else are you interviewing? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I've had some good ones over the last 5 years, and so like sometimes I'll say, "Who are you talking to?" Bob Mold from Husker Du, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's nice." It's like,
Oh,
well, okay, well,
uh,
but Spike Slawson gets gets the royal carpet treatment when I mentioned your name. So congratulations, you've
we
beat out
played
some
New
other.
Haven.
Yeah, right. You played New Haven. That's it. But let me just
I was
say,
born in New Haven, actually.
were you really?
Yeah.
At what point did you wind up moving out to Pittsburgh? Were you real young at the time?
But when I was two, before I was even cognizant,
Ah, you enjoyed the city of
before I
New
was even
Haven.
sentient,
Yeah,
really. So it was all Pittsburgh.
yeah.
I might as well have been born there, but I was not.
Well, let me just say how much fun it's been, like, to go back and not only to listen, to what you've done with Me First and the Gimme Gimmies, but also, I was listening back to Five Lesson Learned and some of the other stuff you've done. And I know, being in a band is not always fun, but you always seem to make it seem like you're having the time of your life.
Well, I mean, it helps that like when you're devising the songs, like if it takes more than 15 minutes for it to be a good time already, then we know that that you're on the wrong tack and that we have chosen the wrong song. So if it starts to feel like work, other than the things that obviously do, like flying and not sleeping and
Right.
all the other challenges that come with traveling, other than those kind of natural challenges, it's I wouldn't say it's not easy, but it's fun, and I'm able to be somebody else for an hour and a half a night or something, and then just sort of it gives me a great sense of satisfaction to
Yeah.
troll crowds. Maybe it has to do with being bullied as a kid or something and being desperate for any kind of attention, like, I mean, there's no better profession for a malignant narcissist than a singer in a band.
Yeah.
And I think it keeps my worst tendencies in check.
Yeah. That does seem to kind of draw that out in people, I suppose. But I mean,
Yeah.
to be in a band, any band, even in a band that kind of goes into various forms for over 30 years, is a really long stretch for anybody. But back in April, you did a little what they would call rebranding and updated the name to Spike and the Gimme Gimmies. What was the idea behind that, and why did you change it?
I don't know. It's tough to say. A myriad of reasons. Truth in advertising, pride, egotism. Um,
There goes the malignant
These are all on my
narcissism
part. I'm
again.
not speaking about anybody else, mind you. But we don't think so much as default. And again, that's probably why we are able to keep our high energy, high intensity smiles on, and make it appear as though we're having a great time,
Yeah.
which we are.
I mean, I saw the video that you had done a while back with Fat Mike talking about the name change, and obviously this is all with his blessing, and it seems to be like a totally amicable situation. But this is also happening while he's stepping back from like NoFX and some of the other stuff that he was doing to focus on other stuff. The Punk Rock Museum would be one of them. Tell me about that,
Yes.
and about his scaling back on this project with you.
Well, I mean, traveling, especially as much as he has done in his life, like I want to say, like as a teen or at least in his early 20s, like they really started beating the pavement as far as touring, and not the kind of like rewarding, enriching touring that he would do later on in life.
Right.
Like the just sort of, I mean, I wouldn't call it thankless. Like it really is kind of a young man's game. If you're not going to make money, at least you can make friends and networks and connections that, you know, and you get to know cities
Yeah.
and places and people, all that. But after a while, I think even somebody that feels like they were built for it, it starts to like, I don't know how to describe it. It sands off the rough edges. And I don't mean in a good way. You start to it affects your psyche, your circadian rhythms, everything else. And so I think mainly he just wanted to step back from touring. Maybe he'll find himself in a spot where he's comfortable performing again. I don't know, man. I'm not in the dude's mind, thank God.
Well, I mean, you're right. It's certainly a young man's game, and I've heard this from. I mean, you and I are not that different in age, but I mean, I've heard that from a lot of people, even older than us, that say at a certain point, the fun of doing it, it becomes more of a job than like a passion. It's like, well, I have to do it. It's not because I want to do it anymore. And if you're not into it, then what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I want to play, but I don't want to fly or drive.
Yeah. So, every band starts off, doing covers, and, punk bands have been doing it forever. The Dead Kennedys did it. The Circle Jerks did Golden Shower Hits. The Replacements, the Dickies, have been going on forever. Walk me back to 1995 a bit here when you guys first came up with the idea of going full covers and going at it 100%. How did that start for you guys?
Well, I mean, to be honest, Mike and Joey approached me with the idea while I was at the Fat Warehouse, which is where I was working at the time. It's one of the few quote unquote real jobs that I've ever had that wasn't in food service, which is normally what I have defaulted to in the past. But I was working in the mailroom and sending shipments to the wrong places, in some cases to the wrong continents. So they were desperate to find a different role for me within the organization, so to speak. But no, Mike and Joey had had this idea kicking around for a long time, and the impetus, I guess, kind of being that the best song on any given punk record from the time period was, generally speaking, a cover. I mean, and that's my opinion. I think the best record that come out of the 90s was Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, and that came out in like 90, maybe even 89. You
Right.
know what I mean? So I think our differences in style and in like musical genre, I think those actually ironically came to help the band and the project, because whereas they sort of unironically dug groups or singer songwriters like John Denver and Neil Diamond, I did not. Like in my household, it was the Beatles and the Stones and the Yardbirds was the holy trinity, at least from my mom. From my mom, so my dad was all classical music, which I didn't really dig, but I definitely learned to dig the Beatles and the Stones and the Yardbirds, and
Sure.
I felt like that was, not to sound like an elitist, but that was like kind of quality music. And I felt things like Neil Diamond and Anne Murray and stuff like that were just kind of like sentimental dreck. So to move that stuff into an idiom that I could identify with, or a vibe that I could dig and enjoy, and maybe other people could too. I think that was part of the chemistry that we found early on, was like them digging the songs and trying to convince me that they were good, and me saying like, no, I really don't think these songs are, but they had like interesting chord progressions, and they could make a cool punk song, because like my favorite punk songs are kind of ironic in the first place. Like to me, The Damned was one of the best, one of the earliest, but one of the best punk bands, just because to the lyrical content, like, you know, I mean, they would get I'm sure they got beat up for what they were doing, but like they didn't like actually mean it in a literal sense. It kind of seems like, if that makes any sense at all. So
No, it
like
does.
there is kind of a layer of irony, to me at least, in some of the best punk and rock and roll songs. Like that's my favorite thing about the Kinks, lyrically and like delivery. Is it just there feels like this kind of like detached, almost detached, because there's definitely love in those songs.
Right.
Um, but kind of irony to everything. Like Victoria is one of their best songs, and it's one of my favorite songs ever of all time. And it's like it's not meant to be taken literally at all.
It's funny when you talk about like some of the best punk songs were always covers. To me, whenever I went to like shows like in the '80s, and a band would tackle something, that was always like the part of the show that I remember. I mean, like I mentioned Bob Mould. I mean, the first time I heard them doing the Mary Tyler Moore theme song, I thought, well, this is the greatest fucking band I've ever heard in my life.
And 8 Miles High.
8 Miles High,
Not to
exactly.
mention.
I mean, those kinds of things always stood out with me for bands, not because of the song that they were doing, but there was there was a sense of fun and a sense of irony about some of that. So when I go back and listen to the first album for the Gimme Gimmies, I mean, I'm hearing Terry Jacks and James Taylor and One Tin Soldier by Coven, and I'm thinking this is fantastic. I mean, you're not just doing the cover songs, you're really blowing it up and making it sound amazing. I mean, is there like I mean, how do you pick these? Is there like a democratic process where someone says, "Hey, let's do Barry Manilow," and you say, "Oh yeah, let's give it a shot."
No, no, not at all. It was mainly so Mike and Joey were the ones with the idea, but they also were the ones that were armed with the original sort of source material, and that was still sort of my favorite de facto theme, even though it wasn't necessarily a theme. I guess maybe you could call it AM rock or something. But that was still just because the stuff is so, I don't know, man, cloyingly sentimental, and it's like taking a bath in lukewarm water. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
and so to the difference between listening to the song as it was played and recorded to like us speeding it up, like that it was like it's partially humorous, but it's also something else. Like it's kind of exciting too, if that makes any sense. Like you get it's energizing. And but the humor is, and the trolling aspect of it is what has always appealed to me. And I don't think I necessarily got that dynamic early on. Like I would want to do, hey, why can't we do a Saints song or a Kinks song or a Stooges song? And then I learned why we don't do that. you know? No, I mean, and punk bands in the 80s, like I wouldn't say that their best songs were necessarily the cover. I just think the 90s was just kind of for me personally was kind of a hard year for the notion of punk. Like
Yeah.
I remember how excited I was when like Nevermind got really big, and this music that I had listened to and gotten beat up. Not like I was, around in any kind of early days or anything. The first show that I went to was in 1984, but still it was something you get beat up for. It
Yeah.
was something that was kind of secret. And to see the whole world digging it at first felt like kind of validation, as dumb as that sounds in hindsight. And then that Green Day, because I knew those dudes, that record went really big. And even if I didn't like it, I wasn't. It was still kind of cool to see these people get their due and more. I don't know, the '90s punk churning into just another like choice on the radio dial. I think was deleterious to the culture itself. Or you could look at it another way and say that it's the best thing that could have ever happened because it meant that people would crave something different, something underground that only happened in like residential basements, like the next, whatever it is, electro. I feel like electro, maybe it's time for an electro renaissance again. You know what I mean? Like a second wave of I don't feel like it got, I
Yeah.
don't feel like they got to the bottom of that genre.
It's funny because obviously as the years have gone on, punk rock aesthetics have kind of bled into regular culture. Like I joked a couple of years ago, what was more damaging to punk, Billy Idol's solo career or your mom's asymmetrical haircut? They both
Yeah.
they both had their place, and I still think your mom's asymmetrical haircut probably was worse for everybody. But nevertheless, that's how things kind of like progressed. It's like all of a sudden it didn't seem as dangerous anymore, and then a lot of punk just kind of felt like it became somewhat arena rock after a while.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
you were never meant to see as much as we see now.
Yeah.
And even at that time, even in the 90s, you were seeing more. Like the age of social media, what that has done for me is make people that I used to think were very cool seem a lot less cool because they share everything.
Right.
And they don't leave because they feel compelled to post and share and comment and offer opinions, and I get, maybe they were never that cool. Maybe it was just producers and handlers and agents and people telling them what to reveal and what not to reveal.
I think that's right. Sometimes image building left in your own hands can sometimes be the worst possible decision you can make.
Well, and that's the thing with punk. Not only did it sort of, was it accepted, and the asymmetrical haircut mom, the worst part of it was when she was singing along to a Gimme song. You know what I mean? That you were listening to in your bedroom. Because that was definitely a dynamic that we caught on to very early on in the band's history.
It's funny because I'm, thinking like, like you've done a bunch of like kind of mashed up versions of songs. London Calling by the Clash all of a sudden becomes Eleanor from the Turtles. I mean, you can see
I
how
love the Turtles.
the
I love
Turtles
the
are
Turtles more than I love the Clash.
yeah,
Like, I have to
the
be
Turtles are
honest, man.
fantastic. And but to combine the two is nothing short of genius. And when you talk about the mom who's singing to those songs, well, she's singing to those songs because all of these songs at some point touch people in some way, no matter how goofy they may sound. It's like we all know those Billy Joel songs and the Carly Simon songs and
Yes.
James Taylor. It's like it's there's a reason why people are ballistic about the band because it's not just nostalgic. It's just like someone's putting a fresh coat of paint on these classics and making them sound even better. To me, that's the magic of what you guys have been doing for the last 30 years.
Thank you. And it, so that to the earlier point, that's like, if we can't do that, and if we can't do it within 15 minutes, then we should probably move on to something else. Like, it's not like all the stuff is there. It's already written, and I don't even think it's like conscious interpretation. It's just you learn the chords and you kind of you speed it up, play it sort of in an idiom that is more to your liking. And if you're not getting anywhere in a nominal amount of time, then you just sort of move on. And in some cases, like, you get an epiphany. I don't want to sound pretentious, but in some, like, when and this was Pinch's idea when we record, where we played a quinceañera a few years ago and recorded it live, kind of like Johnny's bar mitzvah. And we were doing Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain and Tennille, and it was sounding good and we liked it, and it had that that weird kind of trolling irony and like excitement, kind of
Yep.
like you were saying.
Yep.
And then we were trying to figure out maybe a classic punk song to kind of mash it up with, and Pinch said, "Love Will Tear Us Apart." And that moment, that was one of those moments where I felt like, I got to watch out for buses today because I'm going to get run over or something, because this is too good to happen to somebody without something bad to kind of, even the universe out. But
But when I heard that version, when I was listening to the Quinceañera record, to me, the sheer irony of combining both those songs together is both dizzying and magical at the same time. It's absolutely pure genius. It was like a perfect choice for that song.
I love Pinch, but he's no more of a genius than I am. He just sort of love will tear us apart. You know what I mean? But it was fucking inspired, and that's kind of what you just sit in a room. I mean, that's the thing of. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure it's not all music is like that. There are
Yeah.
some people, some singer, songwriter, collaborators that are able to craft an entire image carefully, meticulously, and right after having written their own songs, after having labored over, being undecided about a certain chord or, a certain passage here or there, and then realizing, you ran 100 miles, but we still got one to go because you got to present yourselves. And I feel like it's kind of like to what we were talking about earlier with punk bands, like not only had they sort of become more popular, and not only were these kind of, questionable people on your periphery starting to like listen to punk and starting to appreciate it, which is something that I was certainly ambivalent about. But I feel like the style itself suffered. Like if you talk about early punk bands, they were super image conscious, And then that, like maybe sometime in the 80s, that became a bad word, like image conscious. So like you'd wear shorts or jeans and like ripped up dirty like crew neck sweatshirt on stage, and it's still like and to the extent that that was different from what you had been seeing, I guess it was refreshing. But like even a lack of style is a stylistic choice, if that makes any sense.
Totally makes
Like
sense.
even a stylistic default is a choice. And no matter what year it is, no matter what genre it is, it's still a proscenium arch. Like, and people are still paying you for something, which is ultimately entertainment, maybe information too, maybe a sense of solidarity and belonging, but it's also like you're meant to entertain and go someplace outside of yourself. And
Yeah.
I feel like in the 90s, this look became, especially out here, became codified with like, Volcom hats and board shorts and stuff. Like that's questionable enough as streetwear, much less like, something that you would wear on a stage where you're playing in front of people.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because there have been certain times over since the '80s where punk has gone through these moments where all of a sudden there are like these hard, fast rules that are attached to it. Like you're right when it comes
Yeah.
to, things like image or what you're wearing or certain songs or how you're playing. I mean, there's all there always seem to be a group of people that want to impose rules on it. You talk about provoking an audience or trolling an audience or whatever. I mean, has it ever come to the point where someone comes up to you after the show, puffs up, and said, "Man, it's just not cool to be making fun of Johnny Mathis classics or something like that because it doesn't conform to a certain amount of rules"? Have people ever confronted you based upon what you guys are doing is for whatever reason not falling into a specific category that they need you to be in?
No, no. The only thing that we've been vibed about is not being an original band and being better than the people playing after us. Like that. That's the only,
What a terrible position to be in.
well, for them, yes. But no, that's the only time that we've ever been. I don't think nobody that would come to our shows has any issue with whom we cover or how we do it. I think it's more, like my heroes, generally speaking, apart from a few bands, if you're talking about live performance, would be comedians,
Hmm.
stand-up comedians. And I think especially nowadays, the ones that are really popular and really worthwhile um, have really grown to understand and embrace the notion that like you gotta cast the line out like really far, uncomfortably far, while still closing the artistic circle. You know, so that's what we try to do. We will come to the point where we're actually eliciting like boos and like public or vocal
Right.
displays of displeasure and disapproval and outrage. And ironically, as all comedians know, those are the nights that you sell the most shit or you sell the most tickets to your next show in this town. Is like the louder the booze, the more shirts you're going to sell, as long as you bring them back.
Well, that's but that's the thing, and it's actually a pretty interesting comparison because I agree with you. Sometimes the best comedy is when the setup of a joke seems to be, so far off the ledge that you could see people maybe getting up out of their seats and walking out. But a real artist brings it all back to a way where either it's going to, kind of inspire you, or just the irony or stupidity of the concept just makes you laugh. I mean, that's, to me,
Right.
there's an artist.
Jesselneck.
Yeah.
From my fucking hometown, Jesselneck. And if I tried to say, like, because I don't know the dude, but if I tried to say that he was a decent person in any kind of public forum, he'd probably sue me. You know what I mean? But because like he's crafted this shithead persona,
Yeah.
and it's such a perfect one.
He was exactly what I was thinking about when you were saying that. Jeselnik is
Patrice O'Neill was another one that was an early genius of that kind of trolling sort of, and Tracy Morgan with and he did the same thing that Patrice O'Neill did. They would pick some poor soul out in the audience to stare at when they would just sort of like sit on this horrible provocative joke or setup that they were doing, and they would just stare at one person and pause and let it marinate. And it's like just the timing, the chemistry, the poise, the demeanor, and then the will to provoke and agitate and troll. Like that's something I feel like a lot of music performers, especially in quote unquote punk bands, especially after the 70s, when it kind of became more codified and quote unquote serious, like that they want to be the heroes of their story. And they want to, they're very earnest about like their political or philosophical beliefs of why you should believe what they believe. In a lot of cases, I do, man. I'm a pinko, but I don't try to make anybody else think that way. And I think the Gimmies is the last forum in the world to be preaching any kind of politics.
Right. But as that concept applies to you, obviously you're doing covers. The banter in between songs is unique and it's ironic and it's funny and it's I don't want to say confrontational because that's not really it, but it is trolling. I mean, where does that come from you? I mean, you talk about comedy. Do you have any experience in it, or is it just you're just
none.
naturally just naturally
somebody
you
that appreciates it and I don't know, works on my timing at at shows in my little way because I'm not a comedian,
Right.
though I would love to be. I write a good joke every once in a while. I don't know, man. Pittsburgh was a weird place in the 70s and 80s. And I feel sort of a high pressure environment. And to say that sounds like maybe a little disrespectful to the people that were experiencing real pressure at the time, but like the people that were experiencing real pressure pressured me, if that makes any sense at all,
No, it does.
And it was weird. That plus a healthy dose of malignant narcissism, I think, is what put the urge to sort of to troll people, but then like sort of a dubious approval at the end,
which is why you do it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Well,
course.
yeah, I guess so. Because I don't want 100% approval, even at the end,
Well, narcissism is usually a defense mechanism against insecurity. So you never want to be completely validated.
No, I don't, because I don't like what it says about me or about them, or it's complicated, as I'm sure it is with a lot. Some people are just trying to get a message out. whether that message is like in the content of their lyrics or the vibe or the costumes or, whatever. But I'm just trying to get my yayas out.
Yeah. You can't talk about this band without talking about the people that have been in it over the last 30 years. And when you go
Yes,
through
no.
the lineup, it's freaking ridiculous. I mean, Fat Mike, but CJ Ramone, Brian Baker's been
Yes.
in this.
Yes.
With Pinch, you're talking about the Shiflett brothers. I mean, it must be hard to not occasionally fanboy the hell out of this lineup and say, I can't believe I can't believe this guy is playing guitar next to me. I mean, it's got to be a pretty wild experience to know that these people didn't have to have their arm twisted too hard to join you.
No, that it is a great feeling. First and foremost, CJ just, it doesn't take much to get that dude to start telling stories about giants.
Yeah.
He walked with giants and he was a giant, is a giant. And so to be able to say, to announce him on stage and say from the world famous Ramones, like that's pretty crazy. The closest I had come prior to that was we played before Iggy in Las Vegas at bowling, and I was able to say Iggy Pop is next, which was a wonderful feeling too. But and then Swami John Reese, like I was definitely aware of Circa Now when that record came out, and that record had a big sort of impact on my, I guess you could call them parameters of what was acceptable in music and the so-called punk, or I mean, were you calling it indie at that point? Like, I have no idea, but just people sort of forging a path because nobody knew what it was.
Right.
Not everybody wanted to be Green Day or Nirvana or, and then there were people that were just sort of doing stuff that was kind of just off the beaten, maybe a little more butt rock, because I think that's like there's a little bit of that in Rocket from the Crypt too.
Mm-hmm.
And as a lover and unironic lover of butt rock, like I still love Foreigner. Um, like how can you not, man? Those are great pop songs. And it just so happened at the time people used to write pop records in the rock and roll idiom.
Yeah.
But yeah, so playing next to him and playing with him and talking with him about, because he had a crazy time in the 90s too with Interscope and
Oh,
all
yeah.
the vagaries of the music industry business, such as it was. Which, boy, with like little did we know what was coming, right?
Right.
What's the dude's name? Eck.
Oh, yeah,
What's
yeah,
the
yeah. Right. Yeah.
Daniel Eck? Fucking ugh, ICE surveillance or
Yeah.
no, what? It wasn't ICE surveillance. It was ICE commercials.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway, that's sorry for the tangent, man.
It's quite all
That's
right.
what I do in the mornings.
So in the band as it is now, under the new name, the new moniker, and everything. So who's in it now with you? CJ is still in, but who else is now playing with you?
Swami John Reese, and Pinch, who not only played for 20 years with the Damned, but he was a forming member of a founding member, that is, of the English Dogs. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They had a couple of big hits. Left Me for Dead was one that I certainly remember from that time. And so he's got some crazy stories as well, and toured for 20 years with, one of my favorite punk bands. Actually, the Swingin' Utters toured with them. I want to say it was 2001. So I've known that fool for a long time.
Wow.
And Jake Kiley from the band Strung Out is on guitar, a fellow Fat alum, I guess you could call him. And he's got kind of he's got a very SoCal centric approach. Like he kind of he can shred with the best of them. Hammer-ons, arpeggios, very like he's I don't know if he'd be offended if I were to say that he was kind of an Eddie Van Halen acolyte, that's not an offensive thing to
That's
say,
not
right?
no, that's not offensive. That's a
No,
compliment for some people.
exactly.
Yeah.
And he shreds on the same streets that Eddie Van Halen once shredded on. So,
Right.
not Pasadena specifically, but, LA generally.
I got to ask you a little bit about the last record about Madison's Quinceañera. Came out last year. I mean, it's she's probably driving by now. Uh,
Yeah, definitely.
definitely driving by now. Prom season's probably only a few months away.
In San Diego.
That's it.
She came to the last couple of shows that we played down there.
Tell me about that show. Was this legitimately a quinceanera, or was this a venue to record? How did that even happen?
So it was legitimately a quinceañera, and luckily we were, in still sort of in COVID times. I mean, are we still, are we out of COVID time? Like, I don't, I don't quite get it. But like San Francisco still hasn't rebuilt. That's for fucking sure. But to get people onto the lot, so to speak, was kind of easy. That sounds very cynical when I hear myself say it. But the premise being like we had our ad through a radio station. Um, and if you would like a quinceañera thrown for you, respond and say why you think that the radio station 91X and the band, the Gimme Gimmies, should throw you a quinceañera. So we vetted all of these kind of submissions that people
How many did
sent
you
into
get?
the radio station.
Get
Forget how many there were, and there were some that were, just right off the bat, there was like custody, some controversy as far as like custody and stuff like that. We're not going to touch that. And, you know, so it was pretty easy. Just also, you didn't want people, certainly not more than like a handful of people that were actually Gimmes fans.
Right.
Because again, like it was kind of the trolling aspect that we wanted, like anybody can make, like fucking Cheap Trick, Peter Frampton added applause, right?
Right.
They enhanced and augmented the applause on those records to make it sound more like applause, which is the opposite of what I and the Gimmes, what we wanted to do, what we wanted to achieve, because everybody's heard a live record like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You make the uh
You weren't.
everybody loves you.
Yeah.
Like
You weren't doing
it's
Kiss Alive. You weren't doing that.
no, exactly. And I think it's much funnier. And that was the best parts of the Johnny's Bar Mitzvah record to me were the moments where just people were kind of dead silent, either interested in something else or just decidedly uninterested in us, and maybe a few golf claps. Like I thought like that excruciating sensation, which was much worse for me than it is for the listener.
Sure.
But it's still, the listener gets a taste of just how awkward and weird that situation was. But I will say, ultimately, we churned them, which it's really hard to kind of capture lightning in a bottle, so to speak. And I know tons of bands talk about, how when you play live in front of people, there's a kind of kinetic energy that has a lot to do with the people you're playing in front of, or the room that you're playing in, or just what you did that day. Um, and to go into a recording studio and try to duplicate that can be very difficult, if not impossible. So you have to use little tricks. You maybe make the recording itself sound fuller, add different instruments to give it that weird, unpredictable kinetic energy. Or some singers are able to just kind of master that in,
Yeah.
like I think it's a drama school kind of thing, although I never went, but just trying to like method act. You go into an isolation booth and pretend that you're in front of a few hundred people. In this case, we just sort of like cut out the middleman and recorded it live, but just sort of more excruciating even than our actual live shows where people pay tickets to expressly to see us.
Well, I think you also have to keep in mind what's really important in this situation, and that is, did Madison have a nice day?
That was the utmost. That was, well, okay. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a decent person. You know what I mean? Like, or more decent than I am. Like, I wanted a great record, but at the same time, I understood what an important event this was in her life, as well as her whole family, you know, who, like, if shit went sideways, they would be the ones much more than her to be very offended and very hurt, you know? So we were definitely cognizant of that the whole time, but there were no Gimmes fans, I assure you,
Yeah.
in that audience. Nobody came to that event ever having heard of us or being inclined to like liking us or even giving us the time of day, which they did not. They, like, for the first, I want to say that the first entire set, there was nobody on the floor. And in fact, people were walking out in droves out to the lot so they could actually like talk to one another without the loud band playing. I don't think it was until we played Dancing Queen that people, and then Olivia Rodrigo, obviously.
Well, I was going to mention that to mash that up with the Buzzcocks. I mean, at that point, all of a sudden, you're turning the entire crowd in the palm
Yeah.
of your hand, and there's no way
Well,
there's no way to lose them.
you know what? It was also Vicente Fernandez, Estos Celos. Like, they dug that. But yeah, prior to that, it was just sort of a slightly more exaggerated version of what our live show is like.
Yeah.
It's not that uncomfortably quiet, hopefully, at an actual live performance at a rock club, but that same sort of excruciating, uncomfortable, could you call it Scorsese-esque? You know,
Yeah,
like
you
the
probably could.
just cringe-worthy moments that hopefully get you to want to come see us live, because it's not like a direct thing. It's not earnestness, and I think that's our niche. Is that, like, for example, we went on tour with in 2021 with the Violent Femmes and Flogging Molly, and you know the Violent Femmes. There's some irony and some thematic depth kind of to what they're doing.
Right.
They're also out there trying to be the good guys, right? Presumably, like the headliners, Flogging Molly, same thing. And we quickly realized that on a bill where we're not headlining, or even a bill that we are headlining, our role is the heel. And I have grown to really relish that role. Um, like it's fun.
Well, I know that the Violent Femmes are used to being in that position. That is not the first time that they've dealt with something like that. I remember seeing Fishbone open for them once, and it was the most. First of all, I don't know how you ever follow Fishbone, and you don't ever follow Fishbone up with the Violent Femmes. You just don't.
No. No, I mean that. So in a way, we were stepping on their toes even less, because we were kind of heels, and then they could come in and jump off the top rope and save the day, sort of offend and outrage. And
So, again, the quinceañera is over a year old, and she's growing up to be a lovely young woman, I'm sure. What are the plans for the band now? Are you thinking about recording any new music? I know you're going out on tour in December in England, but as far as new music goes, where are you at with that?
yeah, well, we're touring England and the West Coast with Christmas shows, Christmas themed shows. It's a whole extravaganza that we've been doing, God, I want to say since 2017, 2018. And we took it to England last year for the first time, so we're doing it again, as well as the West Coast, which we skipped last year. And towards that end, we recorded a Christmas song that I'm sure everybody will be familiar with. The joke is she gets defrosted every year around this time, a week or two ago or something like that. So we're kind of piggybacking on God, she and Slade. That's got to be their whole. They got to be like a restaurant or something like that. They do all their business in the holidays, right? Like, and we do the Slade song too, like, by the way. But there's only so many Christmas songs, like, or at least so many good ones.
Right.
And so yes, we did record, and that was in a studio, and is going to sort of that'll jibe with our Christmas themed tours that are coming up on the West Coast and in the UK. And we are going to record next year a fully fledged, full length studio recording in the early part of next year to ideally be released before the end of the year.
That'll be.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's like Spike. Like I said, it's been so much fun to go back and look at what you've done and the creativity and the excitement of what you do. It is absolutely infectious. It's so much fun, and I appreciate you spending some time to talk about it today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Best of luck and happy holidays.
And to you, thank you very much.
All right, Spike. Have yourself a great day. Thank you.
See you soon. Yeah,
All
you
right.
too.
Bye bye now.
Bye.